bring Christ to the nations and the nations to the church. Daily devotions from Lutheran Hour Ministries.
Friday, September 8th, 2023. Not just a formality. I'm Pastor Michael Ziegler, speaker on the Lutheran Hour, and this devotion pairs with this weekend's Lutheran Hour sermon, which can be found at lutheranhour.org. The text is Psalm 32, verses 5 and 7. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you, O Lord, forgave the iniquity of my sin. You are a hiding place for me. You preserve me from trouble. You surround me with shouts of deliverance. All at once it hit me, like a wave of regret, a flood of guilt. In that moment I knew that I had hurt them, my future father and mother-in-law. How I hurt them is a longer story, but even without the details, you can imagine how I was feeling. You know that when you hurt someone, you make it more difficult for them to trust you. Think of trust like a reservoir of water that you need to sustain and support a relationship with someone. In this case, if you do harm to them, it's like a crack in the dam. And if it's not repaired, the bonds will fail. Trust will be lost. The relationship dries up. When someone has been wronged by you, they can choose to repair the breach in trust. They can make it worse, or they can ignore it, which is the same thing as making it worse. When I had wronged my father and mother-in-law, they could have made it worse. They could have nursed a grudge. They could have cranked on that crack until the dam broke and we were all drowned in its flood. But they didn't. They chose not to hold it against me. They chose not to withhold their love. They chose to sustain the relationship. They chose to forgive. Forgiveness, in a biblical sense, is just that. It's not just a formality. It's part of a larger commitment to support a lasting relationship. Take Psalm 32, for example. David, the author, knows he has wronged the Lord, the Creator God who has bound himself to David, to his people, and ultimately to all the families of the earth. God made a covenant promise to sustain this relationship forever. Forgiveness is part of that. David rejoices not only because the Lord chooses not to hold his sin against him, but also because God remains committed as ever to being there for him. And when God forgives us, ultimately through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, his Son, he doesn't merely decide to no longer be offended by our sin. He doesn't just patch things over. He chooses to keep on filling the reservoir. Over the last 22 years, my mother and father-in-law have shown me that sort of forgiveness, the covenantal love reflective of what God has done for each of us in Jesus. They gave themselves, filling a reservoir of trust by traveling across the country to be there when each of our 4 children were born, by opening their home when we were traveling, by covering countless costs, listening, advising, or just being present. When God forgives you in Jesus, it's not just a formality. He surrounds you with his steadfast love through your baptism, through his people, the church, through the Lord's Supper, through Christ-centered preachers and conversations with Christian friends, through his word. He's there for you. He is your hiding place. He gives, not just forgiveness. He gives himself. Please pray with me. Father, forgive me and fill me with your steadfast love through Jesus Christ. Amen.